Hello, welcome to yesterday's Airlines from an extremely chilly Shropshire in England, where it is currently in the minus column of the temperature scale. But it is Christmas time, and one of the reasons I came back to the UK was for proper Christmases. If you can believe it, I got bored of Christmases on the beach in New Zealand. Anyway, Merry Christmas, everyone. And welcome to the latest release video, which encompasses the NG Models December bunch of releases. And NG, in keeping with their recent plans, have put out a large number of models in December, 25 in fact. However, also in keeping with recent plans from NG, a lot of these are either re-releases or variants of previous releases, which gives the set a rather similar feel. And I've been doing these videos now for 5 or 6 months, and the more I do them, kind of the more samey they get, which is a little disappointing. I have to say that I've not been enormously enamored with NG Models output this year. They're kind of turning into Phoenix and jcwings in many ways, in that they release the same airlines and the same models that their competitors are making, and there's not as much variety as there used to be. Certainly they can't compete with Aero Classics, for example, for the interest in the release set. AC, despite their faults, do produce an amazing range of airlines and aircraft combinations, whereas once again in this set it's mainly Airbuses and Boeings, and almost entirely modern Airbuses and Boeings, and a lot of similarity to the recent jcwings and Phoenix releases. But it is what it is, and I can only review what is being put out by the brands, and I don't get a say in that. So let's have a look and see what it is NG are offering this month. Obviously there's a lot of quality here, but also some models which I frankly don't think are needed. So let's take a look at those. But before I do, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Thanks very much, guys. And obviously check me out at Instagram at yesterairlines and Facebook at yesterairlines too. And check out yesterdaysairlines.com, where I put the majority of my content and link out to my other social channels. Anyway, let's get into this festive edition of the NG releases. So starting with the Airbuses, and I have to say that on the whole, I think that NG are doing a better job with their narrow body releases than with their wide body releases. And so most of the Airbuses this month are narrow bodies, and they're a relatively interesting set. In fact, there's a surprisingly small amount of Airbuses this month. We've just got 7 of the 25 releases are Airbuses, and they're mostly Airbus A321s. No A319s or A318s or A320s this month, or A350s, which is unusual. But we start with an Air France A321. It's a CEO, it's got wingtip fences, it's FGTAU, and actually, even though Air France is an airline with a pretty boring scheme, I'm actually quite liking this model. There aren't a large number of Air France A321s that have been released. In fact, this modern scheme, the latest current livery, has only been released by Aero Classics previously, and nobody else. And there are only 3 or 4 other Air France A321s in total. NG have been making a bit of a play with Air France. In fact, there's another Air France model in this release set, and the 2 of them combined mean that this will be 6 Air France releases wearing their current scheme, which I'm sure will please a lot of people because Air France hasn't necessarily had the greatest coverage. So I think this will be nice. This model is one which I think is needed. I think you do need to have standard release liveries so you can get a good breadth of the major carriers, and since they're not being made, major Euro flag carriers like Air France is often ignored by JC and Phoenix for some reason, then this one actually does fill a useful gap, and I'm going to put this one up into high flyer. The next pair of A321s are less interesting from my perspective, but maybe that just shows my bias, who knows. They're both China Airlines. One is in the standard colours and one is in Pikachu colours, and I talked about that a lot because this is the third release of this Pikachu jet, because both Phoenix and JC have announced it in recent months. And similarly, it's the third release of the standard colours A321neo in China Airlines, because both Panda and JC have made it previously as well. So neither of these are particularly new or particularly interesting from my perspective. I'm bored of talking about Pikachu coloured jets and Pokemon. They'll both be fine because the NG A321 is good, and they'll probably be the best versions of all the ones that have been released. But that doesn't make them especially exciting or interesting when everyone else has already been there. So for me, these two are just going to both go into workhorse. They're not exciting me at all, really. So it's nice to move on to another A321, which is a bit more exciting because it's a better airline than China Airlines. And that is Air New Zealand. Obviously, I have an affinity with the country because I lived there for a long time. And Air New Zealand has been getting a bit more respect, I guess, in 400 scale in recent years. But even so, if you're looking for a standard, i.e. a not all black Air New Zealand A320, there's only been one version released, and that has been made by Phoenix. And we all talked about the issues with the Phoenix A321 model. I won't go over those again. So it's good to see an NG version in the white scheme. Last month they announced the Star Alliance all black scheme. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they also release the standard all black scheme. But this month it's the white fuselage with the black rear portion. ZKNNC. I think it'll be an excellent release. It's a release which you can't really fault. I think it'll be pretty popular. It's one I'm almost tempted to get myself. I'm not sure if I will, probably won't, but I'd be very tempted to. And so I'm going to put this one up into supersonic. Actually, I think this is going to be a good model. We've got two more A321s to cover off in this review, and they're both from Chinese Airlines. The next one is Shenzhen Airlines. Shenzhen is a really large Chinese airline affiliated with Air China. This is the first A321 that's been made by anyone in 400 scale for them. They're just beginning to receive their A321 Neos. And, you know, I like the Shenzhen livery. It's actually a very attractive scheme. It's lovely red and gold. And as you probably know, I like Chinese airlines. So this one is definitely becoming my way. It's the first time anyone's made it. It's on a great bold, lovely livery. I'm going to put this one up into supersonic, join the Air New Zealand, because I really think this is going to be a nice model. So this one's a good one. The next one is also Chinese, as I say, and that's actually Gemin Airlines, which is another large Chinese carrier, but this one's affiliated with China Southern. And this represents the first A321, or the first Airbus, in fact, for Gemin Air, because Gemin have historically been a major Boeing customer. I actually do have a Gemin A321 already, and that's by Panda Models, and at the time I didn't really pay close attention to it, but it appears to be a fantasy model, because they haven't received the actual aircraft yet, and this aircraft has that first Airbus for Gemin Air sticker on the front, and the proper registration. So this is the first release of that, but my interest in it is slightly tempered by the fact I do own a standard colours Gemin A321 already by Panda, though it was branded as Winglux, I think, at the time. So I think I'm going to put this one up into high flyer and not into supersonic. I'm tempted, but I'm not tempted. Yeah, it's one of those models where you'd like to own it, but I'm not sure I can be bothered to pay for it. So high flyer for this one, I think, for me. And that leads us up to our last Airbus of the month, and that one is another Lufthansa. And Lufthansa is an airline which, again, unsurprisingly, NG has an interest in. Obviously, lots of people have an interest in Lufthansa, and there have been 16 A330s released for the carrier, quite a few of them in the new scheme. In fact, we've got Panda, Gemini, Aero Classics, and NG have all released the standard modern scheme. This one is also in that colour as well, but this one comes with a special fanhancer diversity wings colours associated with it, which presumably is a representation for, you know, multiracial equality and LGBTQ and everything else basically. So it's a nice message, and the scheme actually is quite attractive as well. Got a row of multicoloured people, shall we say, underneath the titles. Looks good, and you know, Lufthansa has actually quite an interesting range and a nice range of special schemes going about in their fleet. I guess their relatively boring livery gives them the option to do that. And I think this will be a really nice model, and I'm sure it will be popular because Lufthansa always is. So this one I'm going to put up in the Supersonic as well. And that rounds off all of the Airbus for this month. So on to Boeing. There's quite a lot of Boeing this month, which I guess is no enormous surprise since there wasn't that much Airbus. There has to be a lot of something else. There are 16 Boeing aircraft this month, a mixture of mainly 737s and 777s with a few 787s thrown in. So that's not too surprising. Disappointingly small number, in fact only a single 757, and their 757 mold really has not been getting the sort of love it used to get and deserves, I might add, as well, because pretty much any 757 is going to be more interesting than any 787, but like I say, I didn't get to decide on the models. So we'll start off with the 737s, and the first aircraft up is a 73G. It is another Sun Country Airlines release. They released a 73G last month with the full titles and no winglets. This one has got blended winglets and the shorter Sun Country titles, but is otherwise the same scheme. Nice fillet builder to go with that previous release, and NG do have a bit of a thing for Sun Country. There have been 14 Sun Country Airlines releases in the past, and NG has made this will be its 5th 737 for Sun Country. Panda's also made a couple, one of which was a Waffle Collectibles release. In fact, this one, it was the same scheme as this one recently by Waffle Collectibles. And yeah, it's a nice scheme. It will go well with the other one. I mean, it's not exciting me. It doesn't really fit into my criteria. I'm sure it'll be nice though. And you know, for that reason, I haven't got any reason to really diss it, and I think it will probably be reasonably popular. I expect that this one will be still popular, even though the Waffle one is available. This one will be available more broadly, and will match with last month's release, and I'll put it up into High Flyer. So next up, following that, are a couple of Brazilians, and one of these is a little unusual, and one of them is not particularly surprising at all, in the sense that one is bright yellow and is in these colours for Mercado Livre. And I looked this up, and so Mercado Livre is a cargo operator, a logistics partner of GOL in Brazil, and they're going to use 6 GOL-owned BCF aircraft with options on another 6 to fly cargo around South America over the next 10 years or so, I think. And the scheme is yellow. The scheme is very yellow. The scheme is basically a bright yellow airplane, and then you've got this slightly cartoonish and not very professional logo with 2 hands shaking each other. To be honest, I don't like the scheme at all, really. And so even though this is one of the most unique airlines released this month, because nobody else has made this as of yet, it just doesn't do anything for me, I have to say. And I'm going to put this one into Workhorse because I'm just not interested in it at all. I mean, partly it's because it's cargo, and cargo doesn't excite me that much, but partly because the livery is just, yeah, ugly. It's ugly. The other one, however, even though it has been made by another brand, or is about to be made by another brand, is actually much more interesting. This is the Goldo Brazil scheme that I talked about in the very last video that I did, which was, I believe, or was it the Gold video before? I think it was the video before. It was the jcwings video, wasn't it? For their recent announcements. And I think at the time I talked about the fact that it's almost certainly the case that someone else is going to make this before JC get their version out. And lo and behold, here we go. We've got NG announcing it, and their one will no doubt be out sooner. And actually, this is a really nice scheme. Really, really attractive special livery, which, as I said at the time, celebrates the Seleção, the Brazilian national football team. And I'm sure it'll be super nice. Unfortunately, Brazil have been knocked out of the World Cup, so this scheme is coming a little bit late, and it might impact people's interest in getting it. But it is still a really attractive scheme, so I don't really see why not. And I was reasonably tempted to buy it myself, but I've got absolutely no excuse for getting a modern Brazilian airliner like this, so I'm not going to. But it doesn't mean that I don't think it's going to be super nice, and I'm going to put this one into High Flyer. Following up, we've got another 737-800, and this is in another airline which NG really enjoy making, and that is Southwest Airlines. And it obviously helps the NG in the sense that quite often the special schemes Southwest have had are effectively the same, but have just got the different livery tails that either got the Canyon Blue scheme or the current Heart scheme tail, so it's easy to make both versions of a livery. In this case, we've got Illinois 1 N8619 Foxtrot. It's a really nice state scheme. We've got a huge bald eagle on it, a nice shield, and the side at the rear. It's actually really handsome, and I've always slightly regretted that I haven't collected Southwest or more Southwest in these schemes. NG is now made, this is the 17th Southwest Airlines released by NG, and you've got to say that I can completely understand why they're making them, and I'm sure they're incredibly popular in the States, and they're very attractive on the whole. So, well done, NG, and nice, well done Southwest, I guess, for making such attractive schemes too to go on their 737s, and this one will no doubt be another winner. So it's a clear supersonic in the sense that it's going to be a lovely model, really attractive scheme, and great mould. So can't argue with that one. That one makes complete sense to me. Next up, and finishing off our 737s, is Korean Air. We've got a second Korean Air in a couple of months. They announced the 737-900. I think maybe it was last month or maybe the month before. I can't remember. And this month we've got a second 737-900. This one's got this Children's Day colour scheme on it. I can't say that it's particularly exciting. It's got a variety of animals being held aloft by balloons. Look like they've been drawn by a child, and probably have. It's just not thrilling me at all, to be honest. And Korean Air is an airline that is attractive but also boring too, and way outside my collection criteria most of the time. So yeah, this one isn't exciting me, especially as they released the standard scheme last month, which actually looks nicer than this special version where you just plaster the kids' pictures over the standard scheme. So this one's going to go into the course. Nothing special about that. Finishing off the Boeing narrow bodies, we've got that single 757 I mentioned. This time around, it's American Airlines, another airline which NG just loves, and this is the 24th American Airlines release from NG models, which must really piss off Gemini. But this one is a 757-200. It is N664 Alpha Alpha, and it's wearing the breast cancer awareness scheme. The aircraft has the blended winglets, so it's clearly from the 2000s, which puts it outside my collection criteria. It's got the big swirly breast cancer awareness version of the scheme on it. Sorry about that. As you probably heard, my phone just went. Very unprofessional, but what can you do? Anyway, this American 757, it has been released previously by Gemini, Obviously on the inferior, but still, you know, nice enough. Classic 757 model. They released it in 2018, so quite a long time ago. And their version came out okay, but not spectacular. I would expect that if you're a big AA collector, you probably already own it. But I would also say that this NG mold is better enough that I'd probably buy it if I were collecting American Airlines of this era, which I don't. I only collect American Airlines up to 2000. So it's going to be a super nice model. Because it's been made for, I'm not going to make it supersonic. I'm going to put this up into high flyer, I think. I would love to see a lot more 757s being made by NG. I know they've made lots before, but there's lots more to make, and it's a unique space where there isn't a lot of competition. And the 757 is probably the most beautiful jet aircraft ever made. So that's why I'd like to see more of them. But there haven't been that many 75s this year, and that's been a little disappointing. So what we're going to do now is move on to the wide-body releases from NG this month. And I have to say, this is the point in the video where my interest in the models kind of goes off a cliff somewhat. NG have got excellent 787, and now they've got a decent but not as good as others 777 mold as well, and there's plenty of scope, especially with the 777s, for producing some really interesting examples. But NG are not hitting that mark at the moment, in my opinion. They're producing some really ordinary stuff, which is a little disappointing, because there's lots of good older 777s that can be made, which haven't been made for years and years and years, and they've been made on really inferior molds, like United Battleship Grey, for example. And we're just not seeing those. Instead, we're seeing, well, you'll see what we're seeing, because I'm just about to talk about them. So let's go through the models and see what I think. First up, we've got another Air France, and this one's an Air France cargo, FGUOB. It's in the new colours for Air France, and yeah, that's nice enough. You know, what more can I say? It's an Air France freighter. Freighters don't excite me much, as I've said already. It's not the first Air France cargo 777, though it is the first in the updated scheme. This is probably one of the better of the models, but even this, I can only just put this into workhorse. It's just not exciting me at all as a release. So let's move swiftly on, hope things get better. But oh no, they don't, because the next one's a Lufthansa cargo 777 freighter, and this is that DALFJ, where in that bloody I'm a natural beauty waiting for my Lufthansa cargo, you know, whatever scheme, where it's basically just painted some words on the side of the aircraft. I understand why NG feel the need to release it, but I just wish they wouldn't, frankly. jcwings have already announced it. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Phoenix make it. I mean, this is just tedious. A tedious model. It's not even a livery, and everyone else is doing it. It's just, no. This one I'm going to have to put down for the first time this month, down in the gas guzzler, but it's not the last time that there's going to be a gas guzzler for NG. I have to say that even if I wanted to buy this, I'd probably wait for the jcwings version myself anyway, which will probably be better, and also has the opportunity to come in flaps up and flaps down. It's not that I don't like the NG's 777, but it's just not as good. The last Series 200 for this month is United Airlines. It's in Star Alliance colours, which they've already made just recently. They made N77022 in Star Alliance colours. The difference here is this one's got blue engines and the previous one had grey engines. Is that a big enough difference for you to buy both of those? Maybe if you collect everything United it is, but even I would struggle, I think, if I collected everything United just to get it because the engine colour's different. So this one's N218UA. It's also been announced by jcwings just recently, and flaps up and flaps down, so you've got the same issue that you had with the previous release. Just not exciting. There are plenty of United 777s that can be made, and this isn't high on the list of needing. And I understand it's just an engine swap change colour, so it's easy and cheap for them to do, but just not interesting. So workhorse again for this one. Now we move on to the 777s, 300s, and they're all just Qatar bloody Airways, or Qatar Airlines. Oh, it is Airways. There's just so much Qatar Airways. I've just done a search and there have been 39 now. 39 Qatar Airways 777s made. I know they produce special schemes. I know they got the World Cup. But seriously, do we need 39? No, we don't. 39. I can't get over how many there have been. And there have been a lot now from NG. This is like 9, I think, or 8 or 9. It's like... just not interesting. Not interesting at all. One of them's got basically the standard scheme, really, with the small FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022 stickers on the back end. One of them's got a much larger and a more colourful version of that scheme with these big burgundy and pink and purple bands on it. They've both been made before by everyone else. The third one, I've not seen that scheme before, though checking it up, it has been made before by Phoenix, and this one's, I think, in the FIFA colours. FIFA are an awful company, but nonetheless, it's a slightly more attractive livery, and you've got the World Cup trophy, mid-fuselage and some coloured bands with FIFA colours on it. And it looks nicer, but you just don't need any of these models. None of them. Completely superfluous releases, in my opinion. I'm going to put the first two in the gas guzzler. I'm going to put the third one into workhorse, because actually that scheme is a bit nicer and has been made less than the others. But I can't believe 39 Qatari 777s are needed in this scale. Does anyone actually collect Qatar Airways? As you know, Carol, I've never seen anyone say, look, here's my fleet of Qatar Airways. It's just not an interesting airline. The livery itself isn't particularly interesting. Disappointing. And I take that disappointing feeling into the 787 releases, which have been put out this month as well, because they're all models that have been made before or announced recently. So we've got exactly what you'd expect. You can pretty much just guess what they are. We've got, starting with the 787-9s, we've got JA71A, the Future Promise colours, which have been announced by Phoenix and jcwings already. There's nothing more to say than I said last time. I'm sure it'll be a nice model, but it's not interesting. Workhorse. Then we've got a Saudia 7879. Saudia, again, is an airline that's just got way too much coverage. Way too much coverage. And this is the 9th Saudia release from NG Models. And this one, wearing this calligraphy artwork, is a re-release as well, because they've already made it as H7ARD, and now this one is H7AR13. It's just, why do we need this model, NG? I just don't understand. I know it's effectively a free model for you to make because you've already done all the artwork, but you just don't need it. So this one's going in gas guzzler as well. Just an unnecessary model that does not excite in the slightest. And the next one is much better. Scoot, an airline I already don't like. It's in the Singapore 50th anniversary special scheme, which basically means it's got a bucket load of red circles attached to it. It's been made by JC and Phoenix already. Do we need the NG version? Apparently we do. Workhorse. And then third one, or the fourth one, sorry, moving into a 787-8 on their new mould, is yet another all Nippon 787 in the Future Promise colours, but this time, of course, it's the 8, not the 9, which has been announced by Phoenix last month and is now announced by NG. And maybe I just hold them to a higher standard than I hold Phoenix, but again, it's just not interesting. Not interesting. It's a workhorse model again. So you might not agree, but in my opinion, the majority of these 777s and 787s could easily have just not been made at all. And then you'd have freed up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 slots in this release set for more interesting models. Where are the 747 SPs? Where are the TriStars? Where are the TU204s? Where are the TU154s? You know, where is an A320 that predates the year 2000? Where is a 737 700 that predates 2005? You know, they're just not producing the diversity of aircraft that they used to make NG, and partly it's because they're filling their roster up with Phoenix and jcwings copycat models. which surely, if you really wanted them, you'd already bloody own. So, yeah, not interesting. Okay, now we move on to what in theory should be the more interesting portion of the release set, the non-Boeing and Airbus side of things. And there is a TriStar here, but it's a disappointing one, ultimately. It's Alaya Royal Jordanian, which is another airline which NG seems to be moving through all the possible versions that they could. Unfortunately, I didn't realise this version of the scheme even existed, and I say version very loosely because it's basically a re-repeat of the first Alaya Royal Jordanian TriStar 500 they made, except that it's been pointed out to me that the Alaya titles are orange, not red, and it's going to have a natural metal belly as opposed to the silver painted belly. These are not enough of reasons to remake the thing, in my opinion. There are two other Royal Jordanian schemes, and even those aren't enormously exciting. I would be interested, and I'd be happier about this if there were other TriStar 500s making an appearance, but there aren't. The mould is barely used. This is the second one this year. The first one was a bloody Air India re-release. Where are the more interesting TriStar 500s when we've got a sea of these Qatari 777s coming out, and we've not got, say, a British Airways TriStar 500 in the Negus scheme. It bemuses me, the choices here. I don't understand it. And this model, I've got most of the NG TriStars. Well, I can't even bring myself to buy this one. How many Jordanian TriStars does one person need? I've got two. Do I need this one? I doubt it. There are two more coming, I hope, in the other schemes, and I may get both of those. But I'm not going to have five at the end of the day. I don't even collect Royal Jordanian. So, yeah, it just seems unnecessary. I can understand when they're making it. Again, it's a simple tempo printing change to make a new model in inverted commas, but it's just frustrating when they're releasing so few TriStars that this is what we're getting. Workhorse. And I'll finish up with the last model, and this is a Comac C919, which I'm sure almost nobody's interested in. It is the first, however, C919 in service. It is in the colours of China Eastern. If you can call them colours, obviously the fuselage is completely white, and you've just got the swallow logo on the tail. Yeah, actually, I should hate this model, but because I collect Chinese airlines, I don't. I haven't got any, obviously, C919s in airline colours thus far, even though some of them made with fancy models, don't tend to buy those. And so this one I do want to get because it is, as it says, the first C919 in service, and I do collect China Eastern despite how tedious the standard scheme is. They do have a lot of special colours. That's my moderation of that. Yeah, I'll be getting this one, and I'll put this one up into High Flyer because at least it's a different airliner, and it is in my collecting criteria. But overall, yeah, I don't know how I feel particularly good about this month, and to be honest, this feeling's been brewing for the last 3 or 4 months with the NG releases. There's a lot of models being put out here, 25, and I guess there's no reason for me to be as annoyed with this, really, is there? Because they're putting out 25 models. If half of them aren't particularly great, well, it's better than putting out 10 models and half of them not being particularly great. But there is a lot of repetition. They are fleet building airlines like Qatar and Air France and American and Lufthansa, Southwest, Sun Country, and they're missing a lot of what I really loved about NG at the start, which is unique models that nobody else is going to make. At one point they were like Aero Classics, but producing really top quality models, and so they had a really interesting diversity of releases, and not all releases that were going to cheer up an 18-year-old, but actually releases that might actually please adults as well. But now you've got primarily a large number of modern or exactly contemporary, like this minute releases, which are very similar often to Phoenix and JC, and that's a little disappointing. I was hoping they'd expand their engineering capacity and put out, or keep putting out, a wide range of models. That hasn't turned up, hasn't shown to be the case this year. But, you know, they're selling, I guess, and they're broadly excellent models, so it is what it is, and I guess also considering the price of these things, I don't need more models that I want to buy every month. So I guess it's not in the universe. From this collection of models, there's not a large number here that I would buy. I think even of the ones that I've given good ratings to, I think I'll probably only be getting the Shenzhen and the China Eastern, because I collect Chinese airlines, but nothing else is really fitting anywhere near my criteria, and I struggle even to justify getting things like the Air New Zealand. So it's not a great month for buying, not a great December, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just bought 5 Aero Classics after all from the December bunch, which shows that they're fitting much more closely to what I would like to see in 400 scale than NG are at present. Anyway, it's enough of me moaning, guys. Have a great festive period if I don't do a video before Christmas. Hopefully in 2023 NG will produce more of what I think a lot of adult collectors would like to see, in terms of slightly more classic airliners and a better usage of their range of molds, but we'll see. They still remain leaders in the scale after all. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.